It's 9 o'clock on this, what is it, Thursday night?
Thursday.
Thursday night. That means it's time
on a
for-
Saturday.
So close, Billy. That
you.
means it's time for the Live Zone Prime Time. I'm producer Chris, that's Tony P, and this is Saeed Abbas sitting in, learning the ropes a little bit. It's a brand new show, so I can't really promise much guidance, but we're gonna do our best. But welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I'm excited.
Honored to be here.
Thank you
Thank you
very
for
much.
this
Honored to
honor.
have you. And
Thank you.
I'll tell you, standing, I don't mind this.
Yeah.
Yeah, this
I
is
mean,
kind of nice.
Okay.
I'm
All right,
hardwired,
well,
I'm mic'd up, I'm ready to go.
Ready to go. Listen, you know the theme of this show. If it's live and it's happening now, we are going to bring it to you. And Tony P, I'm going to throw a curveball at you
Ooh, I
off
like
the top.
curveballs.
But actually, we're going to talk a little football because it's Thursday night football. The Ravens, right up the road, Baltimore Ravens, they are actually down in Miami. And they're winning.
They're winning?
Yeah,
Wow.
as you know, they haven't had the greatest season in the world, 2-5.
know.
But right now, up
Like a flat
14-3
tire.
with 11 and a half minutes in the second quarter. We'll keep an eye on
Yes.
that, of course. In the meantime, also happening right now. Oh, why didn't that do that? There it goes. All right. Also happening right now, we're heading overseas because the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation currently underway, Tony.
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, this is all, following this, the trade deal that was announced by President Trump and President Xi, kind of more of a tempering down of the trade wars, especially with U.S. purchasing in soybeans and things of that nature. This is a major development in terms of this, trilateral alliance. Again, we've talked about it all week. The U.S. is trying to reestablish that with South Korea and Japan and growing that, especially with Japan's new leadership. And there's been some solid exchanges, from the president's team as well as, from the Japanese and the South Koreans in terms of that pool of money. It's almost $1 trillion now in grants, in potential spending here in the U.S. And this trade deal, or this kind of trade truce in the last couple of days with China that happened yesterday, it's a very interesting time for this particular part of the region, and we're going to see how does that shape U.S. manufacturing, and not just when the U.S. is actually present at these meetings, but what is happening behind the scenes with these leaders across this region overall. How can these visions of the president be implemented?
Yeah, it looks like China's president arriving right now.
Yes,
Also,
South
we will
Korea.
keep an eye on this welcoming ceremony. In the meantime, we do want to get to the White House because you mentioned the president, and Tony, he's back at the White House
He
today.
is. I'll tell you, I mean, I have heard from folks that he sleeps, between 3 and 4 hours a night. This does not surprise me that he's out there giving candy. He probably needs the Kit Kat bars and the Crunch bars with a little Coke, the little Diet Coke in there to make it truly some energy for him overall. That's a pretty solid dinner he's looking at right now with the
I
Halloween.
know, right? Also, the White House all decked out in orange, all the pumpkins out there.
No
This was
costume.
a Halloween. I know, he's got his hat on though,
I mean,
but
this-
you
I
see the
mean,
little kids. I saw a
this is
lot of
lazy.
Spider-Men out there tonight. I don't know if that's
So
a
cute.
popular.
What is he giving? Is he giving out
It
like
looks like
notebooks?
he's got an Easter
Paychecks?
basket.
What's going
What
on?
is this? Okay, let's say gold chocolate bars. Okay, that looks all right. That looks okay.
Definitely a White House tradition. Now, those trick-or-treaters getting those candy
Firefighter.
or whatever they are
Very nice.
included invited military families, law enforcement families, foster and adoptive families, and administration
That's really nice.
officials with children. The president last hosted this spooky event at the White House on Halloween back in 2020. The tradition of decorating the White House for Halloween dates back to 1958.
My
The
goodness.
First Lady Mamie Eisenhower took the lead on dressing up 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue for the first time. However, we do have to mention that some people have criticized holding the event this year, despite the fact that the government is currently shut down.
Yes.
Yeah, that's very understandable. I mean, again, I've been very critical of the tearing down of the East Wing, especially during a shutdown and all these things. But you know what? There are a lot of families that are impacted by the shutdown that are at this event. I think it's a nice uplifting moment to give those families an opportunity to get some candy and kind of maybe put their minds off it for a little bit. So,
Yeah.
again, of course, the tearing down of the East Wing I'm not a fan of, and I do not like the timing of it especially. But I think this is okay to keep some tradition and give people a little bit of an escape even during this really just kind of chaotic time.
All right, well, let's get right into our big story tonight, which is, of course, day 30 of the federal shutdown. Frustration growing nationwide. Democrats and
Yes.
Republicans still blaming each other, but making little effort to reach a deal. Now, a new poll published by the Washington Post today shows more Americans blame President Trump and Republicans in Congress for the nearly month-long government shutdown. 45% say the GOP is mainly responsible for the shutdown that has threatened food benefits, caused air traffic delays, and furloughed hundreds of thousands of workers. The number of people pointing fingers at Democrats sits at 33%, but that is up from the beginning of the shutdown when it stood at about 30%. In the meantime, Those supplemental nutrition benefits, the SNAP benefits that we've talked about, are set to expire this weekend. Lawmakers not scheduled to reconvene until next week. The Trump administration says they won't dip into the emergency reserve funds to keep paying them. That has upped the pressure on lawmakers to reach a bipartisan deal. Earlier today, Maryland Governor Wes Moore declared a state of emergency in Maryland. That greenlights $10 million to go to Maryland food banks. New York's governor also made an emergency declaration. Dozens of attorneys general have also filed lawsuits over those expiring benefits. So Tony, no end in sight. It's the broken record you've talked about.
I mean, it is the most annoying and saddest broken record. And when you look at these moves, by the attorney general's offices, especially from the governors today with these SNAP benefits, this is not only a political strategy by Democrats to really harp on this issue, tie SNAP benefits to health care, to that cost of living argument, but we're seeing this whole thing about federalism. It's going back to AP US history or civics back for some of our older viewers, where you learn about the states have powers versus the federal government, and that balance in the share of power, right? That's going to matter, I think, now when looking at, okay, how do the states fill the gap for a lot of these issues, and could this redefine that relationship between the states that provide the federal government a lot of tax revenue and have also ceded some of those services to federal control? So what does that look like, especially now with this, I mean, it's not as long yet, but I would say unprecedented style shutdown.
Yeah. All right. Well, good thing we have an expert in the House tonight.
We sure
Let's
do.
go ahead and bring in Democratic strategist Kevin Walling joining
Hey guys,
Why am I
how are you
friends?
doing?
This is the fullest house we've
Look at
ever
this.
had.
How about it? We're packed
There
in
we go.
here. I love it.
Here's a nice selfie picture. Ready? No. So, it's like, can we all get in here
There
and
it
fit?
is.
Now, Kevin, let me ask you this, and thank you for
Sure.
joining us, of
Thanks
course.
for having
So,
me.
when you think about this shutdown, the recent poll that came out today, Washington Post, it's still a pretty sizable margin in favor for Democrats, but that polling has shrunk a little bit. Do you think that's going to change the Democratic strategy going forward, or are they going to hold firm even with some of the shifting numbers?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, the end is in sight for this. There's been indications this week with John Thune, the Senate Majority Leader, Chuck Schumer, that there's actually senators, kind of more backbench senators, that are having these conversations. Katie Britt, a freshman senator, we remember her, kind of being lampooned on
Yes.
SNL for her
Yes.
response to the State of the Union.
Right.
Had some conversations with Schumer. She's on the Appropriations Committee. The interesting thing for me, and you saw some frustrations even from rank-and-file Republicans like Lisa Murkowski of Alaska saying, why are we going home again this weekend? They gavelled out today, and they
Right.
won't be back in until Monday night. When you're facing all these deadlines, whether it be, you just talked about SNAP, right? 43 million Americans rely on SNAP benefits. 1 in 5 kids are part of that pocket of SNAP beneficiaries. That's basic hunger and nutrition assistance. Of course, you have some of the conversations we've had all day throughout the conversations here at Fox 5 around air travel, right? So 4,000 delayed flights, that's starting to have an effect. And of course, people are now going to see their premiums, which is open enrollment on November 1st.
Yep.
Well, Democrats have been harping on, right? You got 20 million, 22 million Americans that use the ACA, Obamacare, for their health care, and they're going to see those rates, double, quadruple in some jurisdictions. So the pressure is on right now, and I think we're going to see some movement next week.
Absolutely. Now, in terms of that movement, again, we're used to seeing that a lot sooner. Now
Sure.
we're seeing some of that coagulation or that negotiation happening a lot later. What is the realistic path in these negotiations? Will ACA subsidies be a part of this? Will there be some type of bridge? Because, again, it seems still so vague.
Yeah.
So what does that realistic path look like for these negotiations?
It's another good question. Any realistic path has got to have some people saving face on both sides, right?
Okay.
So Democrats can say, hey, we fought the good fight. People are seeing these premiums go up. They're seeing, their healthcare costs rise. We staked, a flag in the ground on this issue. And let's reopen the government. Let's talk about returning to regular order, which is the normal kind of budgeting process, something that Speaker Johnson has harped on, Leader Thune has harped on. So let's get a deal there, and let's also tackle healthcare costs as an add-on, right? These subsidies for the ACA. So I think it's going to be a 1-2 punch, but I think it's actually going to come from the grassroots, if you can call that, of the Senate that are frustrated with the process playing out.
And when you look at the strategy, whether it be policy strategy or political strategy from both parties, what do you think they're going to take out of this movement when the deal is eventually made? Like, what's like nuggets will they take for future fights, or when they go to regular order, how to actually legislate?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they're going to take much out of it, sadly, because
Oh,
we're
great.
in a constant cycle, right?
Yeah,
the government
there's
shut
nothing.
down 3 times during the last Trump administration. When you have a 3-seat House majority, when you have that size majority in the Senate, you're going to see these kind of fights play out. And I think Democrats felt that they got rolled, especially under Leader Schumer back in March when we had that funding debate then. And he knew he had to put a stake in the ground here. So again, I think we'll reopen the government hopefully next week. We'll tackle the subsidy issues, and then we'll move on and forget this really happened, because we know this cycle moves quickly, and then we're on to our latest issue
Right.
and scandal and what have you into the next
fight.
year.
And when you look at like the strategy that Democrats can take from this, because again, they've had a branding issue the entire year, messaging strategy. What is something Democrats can learn from this experience to propel them potentially, policy-wise or politically, into 2026?
Yeah, it's another great question. I think leaning into the healthcare debate, Democrats can win when the debate and the politics in terms of campaigns focuses on healthcare. That's how we won the House back in 2006 under George W. Bush, and the Senate then back in the midterms again in 2012 and 2014 rather. So healthcare is a key issue for Democrats. It's what you're going to see them focus on in 2026, previewing those fights right now. Of course, we're also going to be buoyed, knock on wood, with wins in New Jersey and Virginia, where they've talked about the cost of living, healthcare, utilities rising, especially in New Jersey. I think that's going to be the main takeaway for 2026.
You just teed that up perfectly for me, because I want to talk about New Jersey and Virginia, the two 2025 main races coming up.
Yep.
We just saw some polling, out today out of New Jersey. Quinnipiac has a poll, 8% lead for Mikey Sherrill after seeing some of those polls get down to a near tie. What do you attribute that to, as someone being from New Jersey originally? And how do you see the electorate shaping up in terms of turnout, policy items, and where this race could end potentially?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. In New Jersey especially, I think there's been, I grew up there, and there's been an impression about the state that it's deeply blue, right? It's always been super progressive. It's always gone for the Democrat. And in reality, the demographics have shifted, especially in the politics, right? So, Joe Biden won the state of New Jersey by 16 points in 2020. Donald Trump only lost it by 6 points in 2024. So it was a 10-point shift.
That's 4 years.
Right? When the Vice President Harris won it by just 6 points. So there's changing demographics on the ground. I think, Mikey Sherrill is a super compelling candidate, Navy grad, helicopter pilot, and is going to win that by, I've predicted, double digits. And we're seeing that reflective in the early voting, right? So we have all this polling data. There's 4 new polls out today, all within single digits, like 5 to 8 in terms of that that pocket for Mikey Sherrill. I think it's going to be double digits looking at the early vote data, which is outpacing certainly what we saw in the last go-round with the governor's race, but even during the election last year. So people are super hopeful in the Mikey camp about this race, that'll be that kind of gap.
And do you see like these two races, whether it be in New Jersey or Virginia, from both sides, because the candidates are very different across the board, do you see these elections being bellwethers for candidate quality or types of candidates being put up? Because again, we're seeing Zohran Mamdani do very well in the progressive end in New York. Is this kind of, for both parties, like what lessons can they take from these elections, whether it be the mayor's race or these two governor's races?
I think the key takeaway is finding candidates that match the jurisdiction that they're running in, right? New York City is very different than the Commonwealth of Virginia statewide, right? So finding compelling candidates with a great biography like we do in these two women, Mikey Sherrill in New Jersey, as I just talked about, and Abigail Spanberger, right? Super compelling. They were actually, funny enough, roommates when Spanberger was in Congress. They had a townhouse on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, they did a
where they're
post
both in the
about that
House.
a while
Exactly
back.
right. So finding the right candidates for the right jurisdictions is going to be critically important. And that's the same thing with Assemblymember Mamdani, who reflects, the electorate in New York pretty compellingly, right? And has campaigned pretty exclusively on the cost of living, which is frustrating a lot of New Yorkers, and obviously propelled his campaign over that huge field of Democrats that were running, and is likely going to see him be elected the next mayor in next week.
And do you think like some of the candidates on the Republican side, whether it be Jack Ciattarelli or Winston Murrell-Sears or Jason Miyares, do you think this can dictate the post-Trump era for candidates, or is it still kind of like Democrats where it's more kind of patchwork depending on the jurisdiction?
I do think it's much more patchwork. The interesting thing is we've seen both in New Jersey and Virginia, right? Donald Trump has not been on the ground in either of those jurisdictions. Right. The president hasn't gone to New Jersey. They've been doing these telephone town hall rallies with the candidates. Winsome Earl-Sears, it was just announced, and they've done a few with Jack Ciattarelli in New Jersey. So that is also interesting on the Republican side. Obviously, it's an uphill battle for Republicans in those two states. Even though Mikey Sherrill would make history, it's only been since the 1960s was the last time a party won a third term, right? Wow. So she's going to, obviously you've had two Democratic terms back to back. So 1960s, 4, 8 was the last time you saw the party in power continue on for another administration. But there isn't that willingness with those two candidates to really have Trump's endorsement. And he hasn't weighed in on the Virginia race. He likes Winsome Earl-Sears, but hasn't formally endorsed.
I kind of noticed that, yeah.
So that actually led me right into my question. I'm still here, by the way.
I'm sorry.
No.
You're playing solitaire on that phone, Chris.
Oh, come on.
We've got 45 more minutes left. No, but, and Tony and I talked about this last week a little bit, which is that, President Trump is one of the most outspoken commanders-in-chief that we've had in a long, long time, I think it's safe to say. And so I've been a little surprised at his relative silence on both the shutdown and this race that's happening right in his own backyard. Does that surprise you at all, too?
It really does, Chris, and it's a good point. This is the first time you've had a president overseas during a government shutdown. And what Democrats are saying is we want to, obviously we want to negotiate with Leader Thune and Speaker Johnson, but we need to have these conversations with Donald Trump, right? The president is the only one that can really corral these Republicans behind some kind of some bipartisan agreements, especially when it comes to health care. So it has been interesting. Obviously, it's easier as commander-in-chief to be overseas. Right. You've seen him, and you talked about it at the start of the show over in Asia, being, kind of flaunted with, all the pomp and circumstance. Right. That's a great thing for a president optically, but it is interesting that dynamic that he is not here on the ground. And they've only had one conversation with Democratic leadership, and that was at the end of September. Democrats have been asking for that since mid-August, knowing that this shutdown was looming. So it has been interesting that he's been that kind of hands-off because he loves kind of the negotiations, right? Mm-hmm. We remember first term, like him battling out with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer in those initial conversations. Nancy, walking out with those sunglasses and all that kind of stuff, right?
I think I own some of those, actually.
Yeah,
if you don't mind, though, on that note, I do just want to play a little sound from the Vice President.
I found out it actually worries me a great deal because I think that as much as delays have gotten worse over the last couple of weeks, everybody here is very worried that we're going to see more delays, more stresses on the people who are actually making the aviation system run, and more problems for both the consumers but also the great workers who actually make this incredible shining jewel of the American economy actually work and work on time and work safely. Here are the things that I worry about. I worry about the people who are scanning our bags and making us get through the security line. I worry they're not getting paychecks. They're starting to get worried about how to feed their families and how to pay school tuition and everything else. I worry about the pilots who haven't gotten paid in a long time. I worry about the air traffic controllers who, of course, make this entire system extra safe. I worry about them, more worried about their credit card bill than they should be because they're not getting a paycheck because Democrats refuse to open the government.
They're bowing to the demands of their far-left base, and no one can deny that. The facts are very clear. The American people are intelligent. They understand what's happening here. We pray that the Democrats, at least a handful of centrists, if there are any moderates left in the Democratic Party in the Senate, we pray that they will come to their senses and they will do the right thing by the American people, that they will stop all the pain and that they will reopen the government.
Okay. Can I get your reaction just to that?
Yeah, so I mean, it's obviously it's impactful. We talk about SNAP benefits for the 42 million Americans. Something like air travel, right? And you saw Secretary Duffy, the Transportation Secretary, in the background with the Vice President talking about delays and things like that, because that's something that really affects a lot of Americans, right? That are traveling day to day, whether it be for work or to see their families coming up on Thanksgiving and the holiday season. So clearly that's an argument that Republicans want to lean in on. It has been interesting to also see the role that the Vice President has been playing. He's been up on the Hill a number of times, having these kind of press conferences, having these conversations, at least on the Republican side. So to Chris's point, the fact that the President hasn't really engaged on that has been super interesting as well.
Do you think that this is sort of kind of becoming J.D. Vance's portfolio to show his potential governing ability? Is this President Trump potentially silently getting him ready for a future office run, or just showing him more to the American public, or is this just kind of just natural inertia?
I think it's, again, the fight for the nomination on the Republican side in 2028 is going to be The Apprentice all over again, right? So every time J.D.
Right.
Vance is mentioned, right, as taking the helm of the MAGA world, he talks about, little Marco Rubio, the
Right,
Secretary
right.
of State, right?
Right.
In like the same breath, right? Because he wants a
Yeah.
showdown of loyalty, over these next 3 years. So I do think it's just a calculation of the president kind of wanting to be overseas, the pomp and circumstance of that. And, J.D. Vance spent, 4 years in the Senate before being elected vice president. So he's obviously back in familiar territory.
And final question before you go. College football this weekend, Gamecocks. How you feeling? You are a big fan of the Gamecocks.
Huge fan of the
How are you
Gamecocks.
feeling about the season thus far and this weekend ahead?
I am more confident about the Virginia and New Jersey elections than I am about us going up against Ole Miss on Saturday.
Against
But
Lane Kiffin.
It'll be a good game.
So they were thinking that offensive prowess. Again, I could see it against the Ole Miss defense. We'll see.
Yeah, we will.
This is
good to
why
see
I
you,
love
Kevin.
Tony P, though, because he can seamlessly go from talking about South Korea to the elections to the shutdown
Ooh, thank you.
to college football.
How about
I
it?
thought, again,
That's some skills right there.
I'm working on it. Again, the LSU football stuff is really more fascinating to me because they are in
Was
the
it
dumpster
50,
right
50
now.
$100 million payout? What was it to Brian?
Yeah, Brian
it was
Kelly,
50 million, I
who
think,
went
in
to
his
my-
contract.
So, as a Notre
Yes.
Dame football
Yeah,
fan,
yes.
good riddance.
Oh, okay. He went to my high school, by the way.
Did
I'm
he
very
really?
proud of Brian Kelly. He's a Boston native,
Oh,
okay?
God.
Go get your money, Coach Kelly. Very proud of you.
No, get out of here. Play like a champion.
Kevin,
That's all
thank
I
you
want.
so much for joining us today.
Yeah,
You
thanks for
always
having
are
us,
welcome
guys.
on.
Good to
very
see
much.
ya.
Good to see you. All right.
Thank you all.
We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk what Tony's watching, and then a little later, we're going to have a little sports recap right now, just so you know, just in case you're wondering. Baltimore still up 14-6, 5.5 minutes left in the second quarter. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Good job, Brian. Well done.
That's the first time doing it.
All right, welcome back to the Live Zone Prime Time on this Thursday night. Listen, we were talking about LSU
We were.
right before we went to break, and in that break, we got an AP news alert that LSU Athletic Director Scott Woodward
Wow.
has now resigned. This comes 4 days after the firing of football coach Brian Kelly. So clearly that scandal not over yet.
No, it's a huge shakeup, and this is actually getting the attention of government officials. We're seeing it from Governor Jeff Landry, who is really calling out the hiring process at LSU, not just behind the Brian Kelly hiring, but also the future potential hires they may get, Lane Kiffin being on that list of potential suitors for the job. And And he's been calling out the agents of these coaches for the last week or so as the governor, and saying he might get involved in the financial decision part of this as well as the personnel decision. He even mentioned, again, maybe it was jokingly, but saying that President Donald Trump should select the next head coach at LSU. So it's really, again, when you have a state school like that is funded by the taxpayers of Louisiana, and when it's such a cultural touchstone in the region, as well as the state of Louisiana, across all the parishes, no matter where it is, a part of that state, LSU, it is football in Louisiana. So this is a very big decision they're about to make, including some potential already coaches in the SEC that might make the move over.
That's right. All right. Well, this is the part of the show, Saida, where we hand things off to Tony P, and he lets us know what he's been watching over the course of the day.
Let's get in the roller coaster. Ready, folks? 1, 2, and hold on. 1, 2, and 3. We're going to hop in the roller coaster. All right. And we begin this roller coaster ride with a major escalation on the global stage tonight. President Donald Trump has ordered the Pentagon to immediately resume U.S. nuclear weapons testing, declaring that the United States must match Russia and China test for test. The announcement came just hours before his summit with Chinese President Xi Jinping, and has sparked alarm among allies who warn it could dismantle decades of nuclear restraint. The administration maintains the move is about deterrence and modernization, not provocation. Shortly after that announcement, the U.S. and China unveiled a new trade deal, marking a fragile thaw in relations. The agreement reduces certain U.S. tariffs on Chinese imports, while Beijing committed to increase American agricultural purchases, specifically soybeans. That was a big hot topic issue the last couple of weeks, restricting fentanyl exports, another big one, and postponing rare earth minimal export limits for a year. Both sides frame the pact as constructive progress, though analysts describe it as more of a ceasefire than a trade breakthrough overall. Back in the U.S., Amazon announced 14,000 immediate layoffs, part of a broader restructuring effort that could reach 30,000 positions worldwide. The company says the cuts will allow for greater investment in artificial intelligence and automation. Markets responded cautiously, with Amazon shares inching higher as Wall Street weighed the long-term efficacy and efficiency gains against the near-term human cost. On Wall Street overall, the day ended in the red. The S&P 500 dropped roughly 1%, with the Nasdaq falling about 1.5% and the Dow sliding 0.2% as investors balanced corporate cutbacks with ongoing uncertainty in Washington and abroad. Turning to the Middle East tonight, a newly declassified U.S. government assessment identified many hundreds of credible allegations of human rights violations by Israeli military units in Gaza, findings that could activate aid restrictions under U.S. law. Meanwhile, Israel confirmed discussions over a U.S.-backed international stabilization force to enter Gaza following the ceasefire process that has been initiated. Though Israeli leaders insisted they will determine which nations are acceptable participants. Across the Atlantic, Buckingham Palace confirmed today a historic development. King Charles III has formally stripped Prince Andrew of his royal titles and privileges, ordering him to vacate his longtime residence at the Royal Lodge. He will now be known publicly as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. The decision follows a renewed scrutiny of his ties to Jeffrey Epstein and effectively ends his public role within the royal family. In entertainment tonight, the first trailer for Scream 7 dropped today during this Halloween season, featuring Nivea Campbell's return as Sidney Prescott, a nostalgic hit for all the horror fans out there, especially as we approach October 31st. But industry data shows a tougher picture overall for movies. October's domestic box office total reached just $426 million, the lowest monthly figure in 27 years, underscoring the continuing challenges facing theaters in the streaming era. In tech and culture, Meta's Threads platform surpassed 150 million daily users this week, solidifying its rise as a major player in the social media landscape. Meanwhile, TikTok is driving a viral consumer trend, the dirty soda craze. Colorful blends of soda, cream, and syrup has turned from online novelty to some commercial products coming out this year, with major beverage brands jumping in their feet to meet demand. And finally tonight, a moment of generosity out of Iowa. Students at a small-town high school raised more than $20,000 to help their 72-year-old custodian rebuild his home after it was destroyed in a summer storm. The surprise reveal brought tears, applause, and a rare reminder that even in a turbulent week, community spirit always shines through. That is my really long, wicked long rundown from the roller coaster. Let me get off the roller coaster here. Boom.
All right. So
good to go.
So, are you a Scream fan? Just out of curiosity.
I'm not.
Scream franchise. Have you seen any of them?
I have not.
You have not. I have not seen one since the second one with Mr. Jerry O'Connell.
Wow.
Along with Jada
My
Pinkett
goodness.
Smith. I think Timothy Oliphant was in that one
Yeah,
too.
he was. He was in a lot of horror movies.
I know Nev Campbell coming back is big because she was not in the sixth one. There was like a contractor pay dispute,
Right.
something like that. Jenna Ortega was one of the main stars.
I love her.
Melissa Barbera was one of the stars.
In Beetlejuice, she was.
Absolutely. I mean, brilliant that they released the trailer on the day before Halloween. That's everybody talking. I'm sure it'll get millions and millions of views. But man, oh man, how many different ways can they come up with to just keep bringing back Ghostface and stabbing people to death?
Seriously.
I mean, it's kind of like The Purge, right, Chris? Like when you look at they made 5 movies, the election
Tony
year.
P, are you a horror movie fan?
Would you define Silence of the Lambs as horror? Because that was my favorite.
More
That is my
like a
favorite movie.
psychological thriller.
Okay, so I'm more of a psychological thriller fan. I liked Purge election year because of just like the political.
The P stands for politics tonight, folks.
It does.
P.
It does, and I just love like those dynamics of like a fragile election and the different coalitions, and I've always found like the Hunger Games fascinating. So like those type of like I'd say horror adjacent psychological thrillers.
Horror adjacent.
I'm a fan of.
All
But
right, so here's your
nothing too
fun
scary.
fact of the night.
Ooh.
Scream 1.
Okay.
Okay. Jamie Kennedy, who played Randy Meeks, went to my high school, Monsignor Bonner. Saida also from the Upper Darby area, so she's familiar with the area, neighboring high schools. But yeah, Jamie Kennedy, who is still, he's still doing stuff today.
Oh,
he
pretty
was
solid
one
actor.
of the last guests in Fox 5's old building
Oh.
before the pandemic. And like we kind of shut down and locked down and guests stopped coming in studio. But yeah,
No
and
way.
it was fun because I brought my high school track jacket. And we like took a picture with it because yeah, there you go. One of our most
I'll tell
famous
ya,
alumni
that is
was
so
a
interesting.
victim of the Scream franchise.
I mean, I think, first of all, I think your high school should have an entire wing named after you. Because not only is
Yes.
Chris an incredible host, but he's also a
right,
treasure trove
I'm gonna-
I would say, useful
Amazing host.
information.
I'm gonna throw Monsignor Bonner under the bus here
Oh,
for a
no.
second. They actually had an alumni who was a very famous news anchor in the Philadelphia area by the name of Larry Menti.
Okay.
If you feel like Googling Larry Menti,
Oh my
you'll find
God.
out
Chris, you're dropping
how
some
his
tea.
career ended. And so here's what I'll say. I have no intention of following in his footsteps.
Okay.
No, but still,
I
you're-
wasn't saying that. I was
I know.
But we're
You're
saying you
like-
should be
I love
honored.
that.
You should be honored in
Yes.
the Upper Darby Delco community.
Well,
Delco
I
King.
should be.
appreciate
There should be a
that.
parade, I'll tell you.
Single-handedly
Exactly.
making sure the phrase water is spread
Yes.
through the DC region on a nightly
I thought you were going to
basis.
say Mike Jarek when you said the
No.
But
Mike
Well,
Jarek.
But all jokes aside, I think
Big
Chris, you
Philly.
should have one. And Chris
thank
is
you.
amazing, and
Yes.
he's been
It's-
training me for a couple of days. I just think he's amazing and just
Well,
very talented,
thank
great
you
writer
all
too,
very
and a
much.
great host.
No,
All
I mean,
right.
tease
We
it all
are
up. It's
halfway,
great.
a little more than halfway through the show. Still lots more to go. Coming up on the other side of the break, we are going to talk a little sports, not just Thursday night football, not just Sunday night football. We're going to talk the World Series and the Nats' new manager, Zach Parnes, is going to join us live. First, though, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. All right. I want you
Yes.
to put that mic on now.
Thank you.
Let's get Zach in here.
Well, there wasn't two, but I thought it was a good transition.
No, you're perfect.
Thank you.
Let's see.
The Larry Menti, I guess he didn't end up that bad.
Zach, it's Chris at Fox 5. Can you hear me?
Mike Jarek.
Good. All right. We're going to come back from break here in about a minute 30. It's Tony, Saida, and myself. We'll start off maybe just talking a little Thursday Night Football. Not sure if you're watching currently. Then we'll transition into the World Series. Then we'll go to, well, you know what? Let's go straight from Thursday Night Football to Commanders. Then we'll go Commanders, Nationals, World Series, and then if we have time, Wizards. So Tony,
Yeah.
Larry Menti hacked into his co-anchor's email
What?
and like published them, and was also having
Oh,
an
was he
affair
okay?
with her.
Oh, God.
We're back on this Thursday night here on the Live Zone Primetime, and it's time to talk a little sports, which is one of our favorite things to do, and not just LSU football controversies. We've been talking about Thursday night football. Let's go ahead and check what's happening there right now. Still 14-6 with 1 minute left in the, what is it, the second quarter?
Yeah, I think it's
we're
the second, yeah.
Almost at halftime. But listen, we could sit here and talk sports all day, but I feel like maybe we should leave it up to the experts tonight, because Zach Parnes, sports analyst Zach Parnes, joining us now live via Zoom. Thank you so much for spending some time with us tonight.
My goodness, my pleasure. Sounds like we got a great agenda to get to as well. This game has been super interesting thus far, guys. Ravens pass attack doing a lot, but Miami's killing themselves with mistakes thus far. Missed field goals, a couple fumbled opportunities for them as well, and then a bad penalty call against Ollie Gordon on a previous drive in this quarter that really stunted the Miami offense. That's the reason that you're seeing 6 up there on the scoreboard thus far.
Right, absolutely. Now, when you look at these two teams, they have, they were major contenders in the last couple of years, could have potentially gone to the Super Bowl in some situations. Now they're struggling and sputtering. What does a game like this mean when these two types of teams come together with the same issues, similar record? What is the goal for either one of these teams coming out of this game? Is it to save their season or to save face?
Yeah, I think saving their season is the exact itinerary for the Ravens, Tone. But being totally honest, I think Miami is just trying to keep themselves afloat, and Mike McDaniel's just trying to keep his job thus far.
Oh, wow.
They've had a lot of difficulties with Tua Tagovailoa under center, and now with the Ravens getting Lamar Jackson back, they seem to be getting a little bit of health, excitement, and some real pizzazz to their offense that they were lacking with Snoop Huntley and also with Cooper Rush playing quarterback in previous weeks. But don't get it twisted. Ravens are super banged up. I mean, they're going to be missing Nnamdi Madubuike for the entire rest of the season. He's one of the 5 best defensive linemen in all of football. So the fact that you're going to miss him, a number of other guys just not performing as well, Marlon Humphrey. Clearly, they still have studs like Kyle Hamilton and whatnot, but they're going to need those guys to play 100% to be able to dig themselves out of this hole. But I think Miami, man, if they lose tonight, fall to 2-7, it's going to be a long way the rest of the season, especially without Tyreek Hill and a number of other playmakers. And earlier today, they actually traded Bradley Chubb, star linebacker, to the Dallas Cowboys. So,
right.
You're talking about kind of a total dismantling of that Dolphins franchise right now. Meanwhile, the Ravens still favored to make the playoffs for all you bettors out there. That is still on the line right now. So, I'm not 100% sure how Miami's going to be able to get themselves back in the win column. But if they can pull it out tonight and pull out a second half upset, I think it goes a long way to saving Mike McDaniel's job.
Do you think overall, again, we looked at two of the longest tenured coaches have been Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh and John Harbaugh in Baltimore. If this season doesn't turn around for the local Ravens, could we see John Harbaugh at all on the hot seat, or is this more about the injuries this year?
I'm smiling, Tone, because honestly, there's so many fans that have been calling for the head of John Harbaugh, and I think he's tenured for a reason. He's great. He understands that the depth of talent between teams in this league is extraordinarily small. I mean, they call it any given Sunday for a reason, right? Anybody can go out there and win. But no, I don't think there's anything wrong in terms of Harbaugh's schematics. It is a lot of the injuries that have gone on to it. And ultimately, I think some bad defensive play. I don't know if defensive coordinator Zach Orr is going to be sticking around past this season, especially if the team misses the playoffs. But I feel like Harbaugh is so rooted there, has the respect of the locker room, and Ozzie Newsome, the GM. When you just talk about all kinds of fusion things like that, and the fact that Baltimore has won so many games over the past couple of seasons, I don't think that his job is on the line. I also don't think so for Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh, especially considering that the way that they started this season, they have lots of gaps defensively over there too, but not as many as our team here in Washington right now, which has just been hit by the injury bug in a big way.
That was the perfect lead-in. Chris and I look at each other and go like,
Thanks
beautifully
for
done.
teeing me up.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, for, baseball metaphor. But let's talk. Jaden Daniels back out on the practice field tonight. A huge game coming up for the Commanders. What have they lost now? 3 in a row, taking on the Seahawks. Prime time once again. Sunday Night Football. Terry McLaurin out of the mix once again. What are you feeling headed into this game?
Yeah, this is tough. There's a lot of positivity that says that Jaden Daniels will play, but I think just knowing the way that the Commanders have been so cautious with him, I'm only giving him a 60% chance. I really think seeing him in practice is a good thing. Don't get me wrong. It means that, that 60% actually has some holding. But remember, They're playing the long game with this guy, and right now at 3-5, things do not look, super promising in terms of being able to get back up in the division. A win against Seattle would certainly do a lot in that capacity, but we got to remember the Seahawks are an absolute wagon right now. Sam Darnold continuing to prove all the haters wrong. He's one of the best comeback stories in the history of the NFL, if you're asking me, just in terms of the way that he's been able to play both in Minnesota and now in Seattle after getting ditched by the Vikings. And this is a top 5 defense in Seattle right now. They have a lot of guys that people don't necessarily know at home, but they're only allowing 2 touchdowns a game. There's only 5 other teams in the NFL that have a better mark than that right now, and they're also only allowing opposing quarterbacks to complete 65% of their passes. That's the 30th best mark in the league, so the 3rd best overall. And I just think they're such an incredible team when you come to just those quite a sort of goal-to-go situations. They find a way to win. Zach Charbonnet has been electrifying their offense on the goal line as well. They're getting A.J. Barner involved. Of course, Jackson Smith and Jigba is having this breakout performance. But I think when you look at Washington in particular, no McLaurin, again, which obviously has been the trend throughout the majority of the season. He's missed a month thus far. It seems like it might be this week and maybe a few others to follow. Debo Samuel will be out there. We should expect to see Zach Ertz and a bunch of the other guys who have been kind of here and there. But even if JD5 plays, I'm looking at the defense to just say, how are you going to get pressure on Sam Darnold? Because that's what you really need. And ultimately, without Dorrance Armstrong and Dietrich Wise, who have both been lost to season-ending injuries this year, pass rush has not been the same. Von Miller is fantastic. He's accrued a bunch of sacks. But even he, a little bit over the hill now at 30 plus. I know that's kind of insulting for us 30-year-olds out there. But
I'm getting there.
Yeah, I mean, Miller can only do so much, guys, right? And Bobby Wagner is so used to playing that spy over top, especially watching any of the running backs corresponding. It allows him to make a lot of tackles, but they're still giving up 6, 7, 8 yards on some of those big plays. So I'm looking across the secondary right now, and I'm saying, who will step up and make the big plays to strap up guys like Jackson Smith and Jigba and the entire Seattle wideout core to make sure that they can get a win? Because otherwise, Washington's looking at 3-6, and that is a hard hole to dig yourself out of, especially with the Cowboys seemingly a bit on the rise, and the Eagles, obviously, Super Bowl defending champs. They are going to make the postseason.
Oh, my God.
Listen,
Eagles.
it's Throwback Thursday, Zach, so I got to ask you a question real quick before we move on. What do you think of those Super Bowl throwback helmets that the Commanders are going to be rocking this weekend?
Oh, they're great, right? I mean, like a lot of nostalgia, a lot of just pop to them, and a little bit of pizzazz. I kind of love what the NFL does right now in terms of just mixing up so many of the kits, the uniforms, whatever you like to call them. It's just kind of electrifying to see that and just a new look for the guys week over week, so you're not seeing the same old threads time and time again. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing them wear them out there. I always kind of love the black uniforms, being totally honest. Maybe that's the Hail Mary bias in me. They wore that for the Chicago game. But
Right.
at the same time, and then they wore them for the Chicago game this year as sort of a revenge testament. But I think they have some fly uniforms out there. I think it's pretty cool. It's sad that they can't bring back some of the older ones, because of some different reasons. But at the same time, I think that these helmets should be really cool to see out there, hopefully on JD5.
I mean, I gotta say, I think some of these throwbacks are a little bit much. Some of the creamsicle colors, it's like an optical illusion.
No,
Come on, I mean,
absolutely
I didn't
not.
pay to watch a game and have my eyes water. Okay, I'm sorry.
We can talk fashion all
I know, but
all night. Trust me.
I'll tell you, we have more. Yes.
You were correct about the Steelers uniforms last week.
yeah,
The Packers game, that was ugly to watch.
Those were
Yeah,
bad.
but we cannot hate on the creamsicle Bucks uniforms. Those are the throwbacks. in the
Oh
NFL.
god. Yeah, they won like 2 games with those helmets. But overall, so we talk about switching now in our region, but to a wholly new sport, baseball. Now we've seen a lot of shakeups with the Washington Nationals franchise again after a couple of disappointing seasons and trying to find their way after their World Series about 6 years ago now. What is your view on the recent shakeups of the general manager? And as well as, bringing in some, from my area, bringing in some Red Sox talent to take over, some young guns from the manager perspective as well as GM. What do you think this is going to do for the Nationals going forward? Are they in rebuild, or are they actually trying to retool enough to get back to the playoffs this year?
And Zach, I just got to mention that this is the 6-year anniversary
It is.
of the Nationals winning the World Series, and the guy that they may have tapped as their next coach, not even old enough to remember when the Commanders won the Super Bowl.
Oh, the GM.
No, that much is true. But Tone, rebuild is the key word here. Blake Butera, this is such an interesting signing. You talk about a guy that doesn't really necessarily have quote unquote major league experience in terms of being in a major league dugout, but he has been at the front line of the Tampa Bay Rays developmental system for years and ultimately has led this squad to a bunch of wins from a minor league perspective, getting 2 league championships down in high A. I just think that he's so good in terms of like the modern era of baseball. He's very analytics driven, very, very attuned to pitchers, especially. He has been known for his ability to develop some great arms down in Tampa Bay. And I think that's especially important for a Washington Nationals franchise that has 2 pitchers in the top 100 prospects right now, one of them being Jarlin Susana, who I think a lot of people are really excited to see. And then, of course, Travis Sikoras, too. And then Mackenzie Gore, still kind of a baby out there as well, who was acquired in that Juan Soto trade a bunch of years ago. But 33 years old, he's the youngest manager in 50 years in the majors. I mean, how exciting is that, right? Like, you bring somebody in who is as old as first baseman Josh Bell, who's going to be running the club next year. I mean, that is such an awesome storyline. I think it's going to really reinvigorate the Nationals in terms of just some youthfulness and energy in the clubhouse. But by the same token, that means that you're not planning on winning anytime soon when you hire somebody like him. This is very much a long-term play, probably a 5-year strategy. We might have to get to the 10-year anniversary before this team is really competing again in the postseason, especially considering just how deep the NL East is at this point. But I kind of look at this hire and I'm like, okay, if I'm CJ Abrams and I'm James Wood right now, I love everything about this because it means that we're going to bring somebody in who's young, fresh, and loves to lean into our strengths in any and all capacities when it comes to the numbers, right? I mean, James Wood was batting leadoff for a large majority of this season, which he would not have done 4 or 5 years ago when Wood, who's an absolute giant at 6'7", is going out there and, trying to do his very best to put himself on the board. But that kind of guy with, power hitting capability, he is usually the kind of guy that bats 3rd or 4th in your lineup. Moving him to 1st is kind of indicative of that new era of Major League Baseball, and it seems like the Nationals are trending in that direction. And I hope, ultimately, that a sign like this of a young manager also encourages a lot of young free agents to sign with this club. Because let's be honest, Major League Baseball, it's great to build through the draft, but the real home runs, no pun intended, come from free agent signings. And I'm hoping that the Nationals are able to make some splashes 2-3 years from now to be able to bring in maybe some outfielders to complement those of Wood and Dylan Cruz.
I mean, that was, first of all, great 6'7" reference. Dictionary.com just came out. I think it's the top reference this year.
That's the one.
Well done, my friend. I mean, again, it seems like with them bringing the Tampa Bay Rays system and the Red Sox system, bringing them together, is there a strategy behind that, or is that just more random?
I think it's a little random. Everyone has a first job in a certain location, right? His just happened to be within the Tampa Bay Rays organization where he's been for several years now. But I think ultimately, they're a premier team, right? Like they have had World Series prowess. They have had the opportunity to bounce back in a big way. And I think if the Nats are serious about making a World Series, they need to be serious about player development. And he is one of the best young minds for it. There were a lot of people within Major League Baseball that really praised this move, saying that this was a guy that they saw maybe as a manager 5 years from now. But the fact that you're bringing him in now, you're almost saying, hey, dibs. Nobody else is getting this guy. Blake is ours. And he is going to be our guy for multiple seasons to come. And that seems to be the narrative right now around Nats Park.
Zach, I jumped the gun a little bit, but speaking of baseball, let's talk about the World Series now because Game 6 tomorrow night, the Toronto Blue Jays 1 win away. Any thoughts? Are you rooting for anybody in particular?
I used to intern for the Dodgers, so I have a little bit of bias there. So let's open with that first and foremost. So I kind of always have a little bit of my heart in Dodgers Park. With Clayton Kershaw and the entire crew, it's always cool to see. But my goodness, what a pitching matchup we're going to get tomorrow. Kevin Gausman, Yoshinobu Namamoto. I mean, these guys combined for 400 strikeouts this year in the regular season. They are absolute aces. We saw Trey Savage strike out 12 last night. That really seems to be the key in who ends up winning in this series, is who is able to actually get guys from putting the bat on the ball. And last night, it was Savage, and that is the reason that the Blue Jays were able to go up so early. got to give the tip of the cap to Schneider and also to Vlad Guerrero Jr. as well for hitting those first-run home runs, which obviously come with a ton of pop and prowess. But my goodness, I mean, Yamamoto, he just seems to be rising to the moment in the postseason right now. And I know that the Dodgers hitters haven't exactly been electric, with the exception of Shohei Ohtani, but people are forgetting, you know, Teoscar Hernandez and also Freddie Freeman are still slugging above 400 right now. They have the ability to string together extra base hits at seemingly a moment's notice. I think if the Dodgers are going to win and stretch this thing to 7, those two guys in particular really need to get involved. The one guy that I'm looking at from Toronto, if they're going to close this thing out in Game 6, is Alejandro Kirk. I mean, you want to talk about one of the most successful postseasons for a catcher ever. He and Cal Raleigh with just a ton of dingers in this postseason. It has led Toronto to get over the hump time and time again. But I really think if those hitters, if none of the 3 guys above really get going, it's going to be which pitcher breaks first. And I have to lean in the way of Kevin Gausman simply because he had some struggles beyond the 4th and 5th inning in a number of starts this year, was 10 and 11 during the regular season, has been much better in the postseason. But Yamamoto, my goodness, I mean, they signed this guy to a huge deal for very good cause. He's living up to it here now, and he's got to play his absolute heart out if the Dodgers want to have a chance in Game 7.
I mean, it's crazy. I mean, it's a great series. That comeback after losing 18 innings, and I thought I thought Toronto was done. I mean, the Blues had no shot.
A lot of people probably did.
And then they came out of it. I mean, it's so fascinating how they rallied like that.
All right, well, Game 6 tomorrow night right here on Fox 5. You can catch all the action. If there's a Game 7, you can catch that here too. Zach, thanks so much for spending some time with us.
Thank you, brother.
Guys, always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
All right, coming up next, we're going to talk about a special screening of a new movie right here in Washington, D.C. You could get in free with one major catch. We'll be right back.
Good morning, Corey. Good morning, Michelle. I believe every company should strive to form a diverse table, to empower people of different skills and every time, what is it?
Skills and identities.
To foster a new generation of, okay, let's go again.
They want you to think it's you, that it's you who made this world. But it's always been them. All we've lost, all that's been done to us, we're setting that right again.
All right, so that was part of the trailer for Begonia. It's the new collaboration between Oscar winner Emma Stone and director Yorgos Lanthimos, which they have had very successful collaborations in the past. Let me just put it that way. It tells the story of two conspiracy-obsessed young men who kidnapped a high-powered CEO of a major company, convinced that she is an alien, intent on destroying planet Earth. Now, as you saw in the trailer, Emma Stone had to shave her head for the role. And to promote the movie, the studio actually hosted special screenings across the country for bald people or anyone willing to shave their heads. And one of those screenings just so happened to be right here in Washington, D.C. tonight. Award-winning barber, the Groom Guy, was on site for the brave viewers willing to cut it all off. Now, we did hear from some of those brave people too. Andrew Lynn was out there and recorded some of this for us. Take a listen.
Not that hard. I actually shave my head every few weeks.
So easy. It means I didn't have to do it myself this month.
I thought about it for like a second, and I figured like it's been a couple months since my last one, so I might as well do it.
Zero. It didn't take any effort.
So you can catch Hugonia in theaters tomorrow if you would like to see it without shaving your head. But Tony and Saida, my question for you is there any movie in the world you would be willing to do something, not necessarily shave your head,
Okay.
but okay. Let's just agree. None of us are shaving our heads.
It's like you were navigating for that. It's like, wait a minute.
No, I knew there.
You kind of knew what we were going to say.
That was a given of a no. But what I find really interesting is the kind of new ways that studios are coming up with to promote movies. Because Guy Lambert and I were talking earlier today. There was this movie called The Long Walk that came out recently. This was a horror movie based on a Stephen King book. And the studio behind that one had a special screening for people. The whole concept of the movie is that you have to walk a certain mile per hour and you can't stop.
Right.
So what the theater did is they brought in treadmills, and everyone who saw the movie had to walk that certain mile per hour that they have to walk in the movie on the treadmills for the duration of the screening, and if they stopped, they got kicked out.
That is so. I mean, I love that. I mean, I think the biggest thing is it kind of blends two things together. Getting the film out to viewers and really trying to reinvigorate the need for movie theaters. So not only is it really about having better concessions or easier wait times or maybe different ways to like engage, whether it be games on the side or arcade stuff. It's about things like this. Do the film companies and the agencies do a good job of having activations that can get people out to movies, whether it be a treadmill on the side, or maybe there is a shaving of the head for charity, for example, that you could kind of tie philanthropy and the movies together. Or is there a meet and greet style activation for fans? And again, just trying to find any way to get people out there beyond the traditional linear way of going in, watching a movie, having popcorn. Are there different twists to the concessions, or their activations that are really helping the viewers get into the movie?
But South Asians, this is not new for us, like our stars like Bollywood and stuff, they've been doing this. I guess like it's a trend that we started because in Bollywood when a movie comes out, there's songs in our movies, so like our stars go above and beyond. They go on every talk show, they tell people to do the hook step of the song and make videos for that, or dressed up like the main characters. But I guess it's a new thing in Hollywood, so I'm glad that they're venturing out and trying to promote movies here too.
Yeah, and I remember back in the day where people would line up for midnight screenings of movies, when they premiered, or dress up for movies, and beyond the cosplaying for like the comic book movies or like the Star Wars fans out there, the Star Trek fan, all the Stars Trek and Wars, if you will. Like I just feel like most people don't have a reason to get as excited about movies anymore. So I do actually love that they did this. And like I said, you can go see this movie in theaters tomorrow, should you choose to and want to pay for it and not get your head shaved. Because that was the other thing. If you did get your head shaved, you didn't have to pay to get in.
Not
and
a
you
bad
also
deal.
got like free concession. So some of these people, like they said, they were already planning on shaving their heads anyway. They got a free movie.
Exactly.
Out
No need to go to the bar. Again, you're not double paying. You're not paying twice. You're not paying for the barber for this week, and you're getting a free movie. And I'll tell you, I'm looking forward to seeing this film because of just how how creative the screenplay is. The storyline is fascinating,
And, you
and
know,
like
this
what
is
themes is it going to hit on? I am excited
one
to
of
see what
those
it does.
collaborations, I think, that like basically at this point you could say probably rivals like DiCaprio and Scorsese because
Yeah, oh,
they
it's
have
getting
had
there.
so much success. Listen, we've
Totally.
got 45 seconds left in the show. Tomorrow night, it's Halloween. We want to see your costumes. If you're out at a Halloween party, guess what? You can still weigh in because we have that little QR code right there. And that
Right.
brings you right into the Zoom room. We're going to be dressed up, tastefully, of course, but we want to
Yes.
see what you guys are working with too. We're also going to talk about daylight saving time because we hate it. I hate it. I don't know about Tony P.
Can
but
the whole
we'll talk
show be about
We'll talk
that?
about it tomorrow night too. If you have strong feelings about the clocks falling back an hour, scan that QR code, join the Zoom room. We'll talk all about it.
Yeah,
For
baby.
Tony P. and Saida Abbas, I'm producer Chris. Thank you so much for spending your Thursday night with us. 14-6 in quarter 3. Ravens still up. Have a great night. Fox 5 News at 10 next.